This is just a quick warning to say that there is a sensitive topic that we'll be covering in this podcast. If you are sensitive to the topic of suicide or suicidal ideation, I would at least skip the last third of this episode. But come back to us next week. Thanks.
It's the Two Strange Podcast.
Okay, you're going to let me introduce it, okay? All right then. Welcome to Two Wise Men, a podcast where two wise men talk about strange issues. Now, I've decided, Tom, that we're going to be wise men now because I'm just going by the adage in Proverbs 17:28. Even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent. Okay, so this is the Two Wise Men podcast starting now.
How am I going to do this bit for?
Okay, maybe it's not going to work. What do you think?
You didn't inform me that this was going to be a bit, so this is this is a lot. Is every film review going to open with some sort of chaotic undergoing?
Well, look, hey, if it works,
broke-ass cheesecakes,
yeah,
name changes, it all happens here, doesn't it?
Well, look, I like to have fun. Well, we'll stick with Strange Men, okay? So this is the Two Strange Men podcast, and this is an episode that your boy Tom has sorted for us.
Yeah, so this is Birdman, and this might be a little bit longer. We have opinions, I think that's fair to say. And one of the reasons I wanted to pick Birdman as a kind of second choice was it has kind of similar sort of themes to Donnie Darko in terms of kind of like mental health and voices and stuff. But it's very vastly differently executed, and I feel like it would be nice to dine out on that a little bit and talk about the film, the conceptualization of the film, and just kind of like the lasting impact of what that film has, because the critical reception of Birdman was also quite different to Donnie Darko's. So.
No, it's interesting. I really did not make that connection. Yeah, so it's good. Yeah, very similar sort of characters, isn't it, with that in mind? But I just fear that Donnie is just a lot more likable.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
But like, we've both been in theatre. People aren't, loaded statement, right? But a lot of people in theatre, not the most likeable people.
Yeah.
We're probably top cream of the crop, I think, out of the theatre people. I'm just going to come out there and say that.
Look, even just on that subject alone, the likability of these characters and the theatre connections from a personal level, I got so much to talk about, to be honest with you. This film made me feel things that I didn't necessarily want to feel.
Oh, I'm bringing the oohs back. They're impactful. What do you know? What we need before we get started and delve into the carcass that is Birdman is, you know, when you've got radio and they've got those little samplers. We need our own little sampler, don't we? Where it can go, your boy, do.
I think we have to develop those. They need to come organically at time. Or, you know, you could just have some fart sounds. Here's one. Look, I'll press this button. Yeah, another one.
That's definitely not being made with your mouth.
Yeah.
So shall we segue quite naturally into the talking about the film?
Yes, let's fart away.
Okay, so Birdman is by a director you may recognise, and I'm going to butcher his name. I've spent this morning trying to get the pronunciation right, Google.
Yeah.
And this is about as good as I can get it without sounding a little bit racist. Okay, so it's Alejandro González Inarritu.
Okay, yeah, good.
Do you want to give it a go? I feel like you might be better at that.
I'm going to just put in an accent. I don't care.
Go on.
The thing is, though, anyone who feels that I'm being racist by simply providing the correct pronunciation via providing the accent can just do one, to be honest with you, because that's what you've got to do. So what is it? Alejandro
González Inarritu.
Alejandro González Inarritu.
Right.
Now that is spot on, all right? And if you think I'm a racist, then I'm sorry, you are wrong.
Anyway, well, he is quite a famous director. He hasn't got a long catalogue of films. He's very much one of these that will work on a project for quite a long time.
Yeah, you haven't really come across like another film of his for quite a while. He did one that was kind of like a follow up to Birdman, which was more about perhaps his own like personal journey, very much in the same sort of style as Birdman. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, Babop or something like that. And now he's just stopped. Well, he's just developing something else, isn't he?
Yeah.
There's nothing else. But he's got loads of films out that you will have come across in the past. Some of them, obviously, Mexican language pieces and things like that. Amores Perros, for example. You've got Babel as well. Quite a few other films as well stand out.
Are we going to save the Piece de la Resistance, where most people know him for? Are we going to tantalise the viewers? You might know him from...
Revenant.
The Revenant. And what's really interesting about that is you look at kind of like his filmography, right? And he started around 2003. And he's got about 12 credits to his name. One of them being an advert, which we'll talk about. 12 credits to his name.
Yeah.
But Birdman and The Revenant came out in the same 1 year cycle. So
Okay.
Birdman came out in 2014 and The Revenant came out in 2015.
Yeah.
But this is somebody who, before and after that, has several years gaps, which I just thought was interesting, how the two were running concurrent to each other.
Yeah, he at least had his hand in two pies at the time, and probably one of them was going through a lot of development, wasn't it? He was might be filming one whilst the other one's being edited, and a long planning process for both of those films.
And now, arguably his best work was a Nike advert. Have you seen this?
No.
So it was called, what was it? Running with Air. Let me just check my notes here. So I've got several pages today for you. Nike, Air Moves You. And you might remember it because it's the one that kind of was everywhere. It was kind of on YouTube, and I remember seeing it all the time. And it's where there's an athlete doing a lot of breaths, like... And there's loads of like sports people kind of doing their sports things.
Is it like specific like jump cuts? Lots of jump cuts cutting from one to another on the rhythm of the breath.
Yes.
Okay, I almost remember that.
So he was a director of that.
Cool. Stuff.
I just want to make that connection because a lot of directors that we are going to cover at some point have done kind of cinematic Nike adverts. It seems to be the done thing when transitioning kind of into Hollywood or out of Hollywood.
Yeah.
A lot of directors and cinematographers will make Nike adverts.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, like, there's specific directors like Ridley Scott, for example, who had a start in advertisement before they went into film. So, yeah, people come from all sorts of areas. But, yeah, I think advertisement specifically as a discipline really sits really effectively with filmmaking because you have to tell a cohesive story in such a tiny amount of time. And so everyone's going through this experimental stage. Well, at least, we've had award-winning adverts and things like that have managed to do this. And yeah, when they have a chance to experiment, it really can be a sort of groundbreaking field that filmmakers can go into.
And it's funny, isn't it? You just talked about this idea of being able to sell a narrative very quickly through an advert, and I feel like the advert does that effectively. And then when we talk about the story and the pacing of Birdman, I kind of have thoughts and opinions. But just to kind of get the accolades out of the way, it was commercially successful.
Oh, good.
So, do you know what the budget was?
No, of course not.
It was a nice, cool 16 million.
16 million?
Yep, which I think for a 2014 film is on the conservative side, considering what you can see.
It had a disclaimer at the end of the film where it mentioned how many people this funded. I do remember that. It was something like 12,000 people. So, yeah, out of that 16 million people getting paid, amongst other things, there's loads of other things.
And then when you break down the idea of, it's mostly a one-shot location film, right, with some other locations in. But there was some good visual effects. Well, maybe not good, but there were some visual effects there at the end. So I feel like they stretched the budget quite well, kind of, as we're saying with Donnie Darko. They used a smaller budget than I expected, and they used it effective.
Yeah.
It made over 100 million in the box office,
Cool.
both domestically and internationally. And then the video sales above kind of 10 million. So, and it's continued to gross on streamings.
Yeah.
So it's made its money back and then some, and it's
Yeah.
very commercially liked. Guardian gave it 5 stars. Get a Guardian 5 stars. Does that still mean something?
Not really, no. I mean, you've got the whole idea of critics giving ratings and then audience ratings and stuff like that. I think we've moved on. Can I ask, did you like the film? You're just one audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Would I bring the aggregate down or up?
Yeah.
I'd probably bring it down.
Yeah, same. But the thing is, like, when watching the film, my interest was steady throughout, but my of the feelings that I was having throughout the film, they're into positive at times, or at least intrigued, and then at other points in time, I'm just highly critical of what I'm watching, and I just wasn't necessarily enjoying myself very much. And I think we're going up and down, up and down, up and down by the end of the film, and I will talk about the ending in some detail with that regard, but by the end, I'm just not liking it myself, to be honest with you.
So, given that we're in these little comfy chairs, right, let's go all therapist, shall we?
Yeah.
How did it make you feel?
It's complicated, and I think I can't really tell you a particular feeling that I had. At times, it made me angry.
Angry?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It did make me angry, or at least irritated, and upset to a certain extent. But yeah, I'll probably give some context to that a little bit later. It doesn't necessarily matter what I feel about it, but that's not taking away from like the brilliance of the film. It had a strong technical gimmick, and to be honest with you, this is my first time watching the film, and I do remember all of the marketing being around the idea that it's all shot in like one take. It gave people an opportunity to remember Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, for example, amongst other things. But it wasn't actually filmed in one take like maybe Alfred Hitchcock's was, but it gave that impression.
Yeah, sort of similar to Boiling Point, right? Which is a more modern take on the one take genre. Wasn't actually filmed in one take, but it very much feels like that. You don't have the jump cuts, the edits don't feel janky. It very much flows.
Yeah.
Even when you're transitioning from one day to another,
Yeah.
you've still got that kind of, the camera is still moving and transitioning back. And there's some really clever elements of how to show the passage of time without having that hard cut.
Yeah, I liked the rhythm of the film, and particularly when you mentioned the passage of day to night. I noticed on the time code at the first point in time when you have a day to night time lapse, that moment was literally halfway through the film. It's a film that's like 1 hour 59 or something like that, and yeah, it's in the late 50 minute that actually happens. So it was interesting that it had that sort of structured rhythm to it. And I think with this film, one of the things you've got to marvel at is the intense, effective choreography from start to finish. It seems like every movement is fully rehearsed from where the camera's going to be. Obviously, there is no room for ad-libbing or doing something like, that jazz music would denote is going on. It's all just very specific movements. Everyone needs to know their cues to a T, and they're long takes as well. So it's all really impressive. There's one point in time where, oh God, I was going to say Martin Keown, but that's a football player. Who's the main guy? What's his name?
Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton, there you go. Yeah, that's how I get the connection. Michael Keaton holds a flower. The critic, the play critic, puts the flower back in his hand and he's holding it and he throws the flower. And even the flower had perfect choreography. It managed to stay in shot until it faded out into the shadows. It's not like it hit anything or bounced off. Everything was just perfect. And yeah, it's a real marvel just because of that. You think of the visual aspects of it, but the technical, practical aspects of actually creating that, amazing.
Well, structurally, it's like a play, right? The dialogue's quite like longed out. Like you said, every actor needs to be on point.
Yeah.
because it's long scenes, it's long takes, it's fluid movement, it's everything going right in that one take.
Yeah.
Very much like the structure of a play. I
Yeah.
did feel like I was at times watching a very orchestrated filmed play.
Yeah. I mean, there's quite a few films like that. I think particularly films that are adapted from plays tend to have that feeling. You know, one that came out quite recently, The Whale, definitely had that all in one place. Definitely different to the film that we're talking about. I think if we're looking at this from a theatre genre, this definitely fits within a farce as a genre. You know, this is a comedy of fools, basically, or let's face it, arseholes, absolute horrible people.
Cocks.
Cocks. A farce of cocks, yes.
Farce of cocks.
Yeah, there you go.
And we will be talking about phalluses and cocks and hard-ons, I'm
well,
sure.
you will. I've not written much about Edward Norton's penis in my
But you
notes.
knew what I was making reference to.
Well, of course.
Because it's right there.
Yeah.
Quite literally, like just...
Quite literally, yeah. He gets his bum out as well. Did you notice the tattoo that he had on his back at that point in time?
No. I forget you pause these frames, don't you?
It
was that one of your pause
Are you
moments?
suggesting that I paused it when Edward Norton got his bottom out?
I just know that your process is to pause and make notes. If you just so happened to pause when
I didn't know where to look. I wasn't going to look down, so I looked up. Okay? Don't insinuate anything, all right? I was never confused. Anyway, so...
This does feel like a therapy session, doesn't it? Just to readjust myself.
So yeah, it was an Ouroboros in a figure of 8. That's what I kind of noticed. I thought it was quite interesting. I thought that there was actually bits in particular that had a reason for being there. We kind of covered that like in the previous films that we've looked at. You know, I tend to like bring that up, but for this one, I was to a certain extent a little bit disappointed that they didn't go further with that. And I mention this now because as we get into the film, I think it's important to at least point out these things in at least some sort of sequence. So one of these elements of production design, bit of foreshadowing and stuff like that, was the little card that sits in the corner of the mirror. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Do you remember what it says?
No.
Okay, that's fine. I did write it down. Give me a second to find it. A thing is a thing, not what is said of that thing. Now, that for me sums up the overall plot of the film in a way. And I just feel like because I had that set up, it wasn't anything that I needed to come to a conclusion about. You know, that's normally what we do with films, right? We go, so what was this about? What do I take from this? What's the point of all of this? And it was kind of like there. And often you have like quotes and things like that do that. But that film also had those quotes at the start, you know, when they had the real nice sort of text, reminded very much of like something like Saul Bass would like create or something like that. Going on with the jazz music and stuff, they had quotes there. I wasn't necessarily interested in that one, but you then have that one. And that essentially is the lesson that Keaton never learns, you know? And if anything, all we're left with is to decide whether he's going to learn that lesson or not. He's obviously thinking he needs to learn that lesson, but it just goes completely tits up, you know. And yeah, it's a farce, isn't it? It's a story, an overly complicated story full of buffoons, you know.
So the original conception from the director was that it was going to be a farcical comedy.
Okay.
So that was the root of what it was, and it wasn't until the other 3 writers got involved that it started to kind of bleed into. So after his previous film, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, Bilou.
Was that the one before?
Yes.
Oh, that was one before. I thought that was the one after.
No, that's the one before.
Okay, and that stars a documentor, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I kind of feel like I'm just looking at the details of that. That looks like his own sort of like semi-autobiographical story, or at least
think so,
inspired by his own events.
But that will kind of come into play with this too.
Yeah.
So one of the writers, again, Alexander Dinelaris,
Okay.
I believe it is pronounced, but I didn't check that one. He was very much a prominent playwright for a long time and has been on Broadway for many years.
Yeah.
And he said a lot of the film, a lot of the personality and the structure of the film came from his own dealings with directors and playwrights and just the sort of uncomfortableness that he's had during his time in the theatre.
Yeah.
And he very much aligned Birdman to be more of kind of like less of a comical farce and more of a think piece. And
Okay.
I think it kind of sits somewhere in the middle.
Well, for me, it's definitely a think piece. I don't feel the comedy myself. Like, it makes me angry. Like, because I have my own experiences of the theatre. You know, this is kind of what I was always observing throughout. So I'm glad I now know that. You know, and that was the intention, because I kept skitting between, like, are they aware? Like, is this ironic? Is this parodying, like, theatre kids and stuff? Like, it essentially it felt to me very much like a film made for theatre kids by theatre kids.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen it, but audiences, I'd assume some of you have seen it, so you might have an idea of what I mean by this. There's a Martin Short, Stephen Martin series called Only Murders in the Building, and it's gone a number of different seasons now. And you know, they're actors, they've done theatre, they've done other such things as well. You know, they're working with, you know, people making this sort of ensemble comedy, which in itself is actually quite like a farce, but it's got the idea of a murder mystery at the heart of it. By the time they hit the second season, they've kind of dialed back on the mystery elements, and they bring in this whole idea that rather than like focus on creating a podcast, this season we're going to focus on, there's the podcast, but we're all going to be distracted while Martin Short puts on a theatre play. And it lost me because a lot of the humour, a lot of the story was focused on theatre kid shit.
Yeah.
And it's just disappointing because, like, for the majority of people out there, you're not theatre kids. And it's got to appeal to a wide audience, you know?
It's very niche and they're trying to, like, apply it everywhere.
Yeah, it's like they're just making stuff for their own kind, you know?
What's super interesting about that as well, and this might offer you a little bit more context, it might also make you angrier. Who knows at this point? You seem very angry about the fact that, I don't know, theatre exists.
Fuck theatre!
Yeah. That's a soundbite. Fuck theatre. So the process of writing the script, as I said, was 4 writers, right? But they all lived in different parts of kind of, I say the world, basically America and South America.
Yeah.
So that kind of half of the world. So a lot of the devising came through Skype calls.
Okay.
Now, they say that benefited the process, but I can kind of see that. It kind of does feel a little bit like, well, what about this? And then what about this? And then what about this at times? Because it lacks focus.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, not in terms of like the main character, but in terms of like, what do you want me to feel and what bits are important?
Yeah. There's so many things going on. Under the surface is the original sort of idea that Iñárritu had, which was to have the farce. And then they've got the other stuff on there on top. And so you've got the guy's influence with the theatre, the uncomfort of like working with theatre. And then you've also got the I guess I'd assume it's another idea coming in there with the whole actual Birdman premise that he's getting talked to and stuff. He has telekinetic powers and things like that. And, you know, a guy that's slowly losing his mind or has already lost his mind, even by the start of the film. It's like, it's so spread out over the 2 hours or under 2 hours that you're right. It's like little pockets of this and then little pockets of that. And I always get a little bit weary when you have too many writers on a project.
Yeah.
You know, you can have a whole writer's room and stuff like that. That's fine, sure. And I guess that's what happened. But a lot of the time, you know, things go through rewrites and then writers get added onto it and stuff like that. And it's generally not a great way for a production to actually go. And there's often lots of problems and issues with the story because of that. If they're all doing it at once, I guess it has that writer's room, but you definitely do have that thing of like, it feels like an amalgamation.
Yeah, and that was never more the case than for me, the beginning.
Yeah.
So you open up, You have that, he's in his dressing room. There's the card. He's trying to talk to his daughter, who's his assistant, to get him flowers. And then his kind of lawyer / everything comes into the room.
Yeah.
Okay, I get this film.
Yeah.
You're giving me a kind of grounded story about, somebody who's kind of maybe having a little bit of a crisis and wants to get back to, the good old days. And then they start to reference kind of the superhero genre, and they mention kind of like the Marvel films, because of course I clocked into that.
Yeah.
And they mention like they're name dropping actual stars, right?
Yeah.
And they're going, well, we tried to get Jeremy Renner for this, and
They had to replace someone because they'd been hit with a light, basically.
Yeah. But like that first part where they were actually mentioning actual stars and actual superhero movies, I was like, okay, so you want me to believe that this is happening in a kind of universe,
like
world.
A metatextual fiction of some sort.
Yeah, but then this, because let's face it, Birdman is basically an allegory for Superman, right? Superman 1, 2, 3 being these kind of amazing sort of...
Yeah, or is it not just Batman?
Maybe Batman?
I mean, he played Batman, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big indication, Tom. I know you like Superman.
Well, then you probably poo-hoo one of my main...
Poo-hoo?
Poo-hoo, yeah.
Who am I pooing?
Well, we're not talking about poo again. So this is one of my main problems with the film, and you'll probably go, well, actually that means that, and then I'll feel stupid for about an hour. But the whole point was that Michael Keaton's character, Regan...
Yeah, I like the name.
It's cool. Is this kind of down and out actor, and is trying to get back on his luck, and it's established he's not that good of an actor. And to be honest, Michael Keaton isn't good in it at all, in my personal opinion.
What, in the bits where he's not acting?
Yeah, it all feels ham-forced.
My problem, and absolutely no problem with the actor. He's got a recognisable face, but he's also aging and stuff. There was one particular scene that I kind of felt like it didn't necessarily work. Is when he's pulled up Edward Norton and he's got him against these lockers, and he's telling him this sort of false story of when he's abused. I literally could not understand what he was saying. And I've got hearing problems, but other people around me were the same. They could not understand what he's saying, and so it's weird. This whole film has got that whole hyper reality thing, this sort of metatextual aspect of it that we've just mentioned. But he's parodying not being a good actor, but also at the same time making issues. Issues are coming out with his acting in general.
Yeah. And that's why I say that I think Michael Keaton kind of phoned it in a little bit, or if it is farcical, then purposely kind of hammed it up. Because that bit where he was like, oh, and my dad... You as an audience member had to believe that Edward Norton's character believed that story for that scene to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't believe it. I obviously knew it was kind of like a red herring anyway, but I didn't believe it. Edward Norton would just be like, are you acting right now? Because it was all really forced, right?
There was a couple of points in time where I kind of feel like they dropped the punchline with it. So there was that moment that kind of passed inconsequentially. But before then, when Edward Norton is pretending that he can just naturally recite any sort of play that's read to him, he stays in that for a moment, and then it immediately just jumps to, no, I've been doing lines with, my sister.
Yeah.
Well, I assume it's his sister. He tries to fuck her, doesn't he?
That's not his sister, that's his girlfriend.
Is it his girlfriend?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Makes sense. It was so difficult because I was confused. She introduced him by saying, we share a vagina.
Yeah, as in they have sex together.
But that, I was thinking, is that did they come out of the same vagina?
I mean, it is confusing. Because at first I was like, right. And then they were like, get your stuff out of the apartment. I'm like, well, it's either very Alabama here.
Yeah.
Or they're together. Because she says at one point, we split up.
Okay.
And then there's that weird lesbian kiss that's never then revisited again.
Yeah. But the whole thing about the hyper reality and everything like that, the characters and what they do in the characters kind of loosely represent what the actors are like. So Michael Keaton's character was Batman, and then this is his kind of comeback moment is this film itself, and he's putting on a play and everything like that, and it mirrors real life. With Edward Norton, he's got a history of method acting and kind of getting into trouble with that. The girl from King Kong and Mulholland Drive, I can't remember her name, the one we've just been talking about, like, there's this lesbian kiss in Mulholland Drive. And so they put a lesbian kiss in this. But otherwise, there's nothing.
But it all feels ramshackled in, right?
It is ramshackled in. It's not
organic.
entirely thought about.
And also, like, I get the connection to Batman and Michael Keaton and kind of coming back, but Michael Keaton for me never really fell off.
No.
Like, okay, maybe Batman was his highlight, but it's not like this Regan character where he's not had work for 20 years.
Yeah.
I think they missed an opportunity to cast a proper kind of, like, Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
Just out the top of my head. Someone that actually has kind of fallen off the spotlight. Fair enough with Mel Gibson, it's...
well, I'll tell you what is a good
but...
example of this where it's actually worked is Darren Aronofsky's The Wrestler, which is the best wrestler-themed film ever made. Like, you can't tell me otherwise, okay? It's such an amazing film. At one point in time, it was going to be co-written, or at least it was going to share a script with Black Swan. But actually, they made it separate. But Mickey Rourke cast as that character, I mean, he is that, isn't he? He's got a background in boxing, and his career completely, like, had gone off the rails and things like that. And then he does this, and it feels like a final swan song for him. It has all of those elements. So you can actually do that without being so on the nose that you're talking about an actor being an actor. You know, they can play other things and do the similar sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, you probably could say that Daniel Day-Lewis in that film where he's making shoes probably has that element as well. You know? Anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because when we talk about these missed opportunities, and it's funny you bring up Edward Norton, because I did some digging about kind of his reputation. And I think everyone knows that he's a bit difficult to work with, but when you speak to them, they don't know the context, right?
Yeah.
So I did a little bit of digging, because I, like most people, just knew that he had a little bit of a reputation for being difficult. Now, unlike people like Christian Bale, who has had problems with on set.
I think Jared Leto is a big one of these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of, casting people down, kind of, the whole thing with Christian Bale and the lighting incident is now in popular culture, isn't it?
Do I want... No! Don't shut me up!
Yeah.
But with Edward Norton, it's a little bit different. So he apparently is very respectful on set. He's a very good actor. His problem is always with management.
Okay.
And so the whole thing with the Hulk was not necessarily about him kind of on set and how he was acting. It's that he wanted more creative rights to be able to... So he only joined the Hulk under the premise that he could rewrite some of the screenplay. Yeah. Which never happened.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, but when you think about the way in which the Marvel series has gone, that would have never happened. They had their whole idea. And too many cooks spoil the broth at the end of the day. I mean, as you can see, like, Marvel's kind of tanked now, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, I don't agree with that. Well, that Marvel's tanked.
But I mean, it is tanking.
It
is tanking. We'll see.
We'll
see how the Winter Soldier does. Yeah.
Your Winter Soldier? Do you mean Captain America: The Brave New World?
Yeah, that one. Yeah, they all merge into one, mate. All right.
Unbelievable. So I'm just going to pretend that whole minute didn't happen because it affected my soul. Now I'm angry. Now it's making me roid out.
But they haven't just cast someone who has had trouble on set and stuff. They've cast someone who played a superhero and through that had trouble on set. So they kind of mimic that more, don't they?
Yeah. And this is my point, right? So whenever he's had a tumultuous time or been kicked off a project, it's been because he's wanted more creative control.
Yeah.
The first establishing scene with him is him kind of trying to rewrite and trying to go through this process of having more creative control. So over thinking, I kept going back to this idea, you're talking about quotes earlier, imitating life. And I feel like this is what the film wants. Yeah. It wants that idea of art imitating life. And 90% of the time, I think it gets it. But because it's such a What's the thing when you just put loads of stuff together and hope it works? A homunculus box?
A smorgasbord.
Where you just put a bunch of random like chemical elements together and hope it makes a good result.
Yeah.
That kind of, it feels like that.
Yeah.
Let's put all these great actors together with all of this experience that they can reflect on in our script. Let's get all of lived-in experience in there. And what you end up with is about 12 to 13 people's lived experiences.
Yeah.
So then it becomes a hard watch, right?
Yeah. I think the jazz was a nice choice. It's quite illustrative of the whole process. You know, it's at least trying to make it feel like this is like natural chaotic energy, you know, and with that, you know, you got a little bit of trumpet, you got a little bit of this, and it's all going to come in there at different points in time, you know, and they've tried to mimic that physically as well.
Yeah. So you were saying about that you had other thoughts, and I'm just looking at your notes.
Yeah.
And
honestly, I don't know where to start, to be honest with you. So yeah, there's, I don't know, like, if anything, I kind of felt like a lot of the time my discomfort came from the whole idea of not enjoying the theatre environment, you know, and I think, if anything, it might be a good idea for us to maybe like talk about our own personal experiences with the theatre. I think yours is a lot stronger than mine. So for me, I've not necessarily strutted the boards on a professional sense, but, you know, I was educated in theatre and things like that. And the annoying thing is, like, I left school with no education, was a gardener for a time, and then decided, no, I'm not going to do that for the rest of my life. That's just a hobby. I want to do something else. And so I wanted to become an actor for screen. And there's a lot of actors, I think particularly modern day actors, that want to go down that route, and they try to avoid theatre. For me, I think a good example of that would have perhaps been Daniel Craig. He always had it in his mind that he wanted to be a screen actor and not be a triple threat. What's a triple threat, John?
a triple threat is somebody that in the theatre world is incredibly employable because they have the three main skills. So they're usually categorised as being able to organically act, and be able to sing, particularly several different kind of, you know, if you're a baritone, having something else in your repertoire, and to be able to dance multiple styles. So triple threat isn't just about being able to use a few of those skills. It's being adept or a master of all three of those skills, being able to apply them over many different roles.
But when you think about it, when you think of all of the actors, and I'm talking leading men, character actors and stuff like that, how many of those fuckers are true triple threats? Yeah?
Just my friend Hugh.
Who's Hugh?
Hugh Jackman.
Oh, Hugh Jackman. Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
He's definitely one. Yeah.
Emma Stone, who was in this film, is also a triple threat.
Yeah. But look, there are so many actors out there that aren't that. Yeah. When you go down the education route and you go and you consider how people are employed, you know, and what the route is and what gates you have to cross and what gatekeepers are there to get you to that point. You've got musicals, theatre that you have to do in order to get there, and the styles are so totally different, and it's upsetting to me just thinking about, like, you know, how much faffing you have to do before you can get to start doing the things that you want to do. I don't know, that was my experience, you know.
It kind of, so this weekend I was watching the TV, as I sometimes do, a strange man, but I'm not that strange.
Yeah.
And Brie Larson was on Saturday Morning Kitchen.
Okay.
Which is pretty weird, right? Hollywood A-lister on a random Saturday Morning Kitchen programme, but I let it slide. And she was talking about doing a run in London on the West End.
Yeah.
And then she was comparing kind of, you know, TV and film acting to theatre acting. And she was essentially saying, it's a lot bloody harder, folks.
What, theatre?
Yeah.
So it's different. And I think I'm not necessarily saying one's hard and one's easy. I'm not saying that whatsoever, okay? There are different things that you need to take into account. There is an opportunity in acting for screen where, you know, you have to do just little bits and then you're set up for next cues and everything like that. You perhaps have to have a bit more patience. than, you know, theatre where it's all just whoosh in one go.
Yeah.
But also, you know, there's the whole idea of projecting to hit the back rows and other such things like that you have in theatre that you don't have for screen as well.
And acting for screen is subtle, right?
Yeah.
When you're designing a character for theatre, you are going as big as you possibly can.
Big gesturing at times, you know. I kind of felt like I wanted to put it into words, but all I could come up with is like, you know, like subconscious jazz hands, like that's
bit of Bob Fosse.
Yeah, it's just like, and you saw that in this acting as well, you know, and they parody it in like Friends, don't they? Whenever Joey has an acting role or something like that, is playing into that. And like all a guy wants is to go on screen, but he has to go through all of the fucking theatre first, and he probably has a lot of fun and stuff like that. But if it's not what you want to do, why the hell are you having to do it?
I feel like you're projecting a lot through this film.
Yeah, I am. I actually, at the end of this film, I had quite a vivid dream about this. And it actually got me, like, physically annoyed. And I was just irritable, just generally irritable after watching this film, and I couldn't work it out. It ended up being therapy for me, essentially. Shall I tell you my dream?
I'm all ears.
Okay, I'll tell you my dream, okay? So, yeah, it's not often that I have a dream that's this vivid. Okay, but I did have one, and I was able to then break it apart and try and understand it, and it all led me back to that experience of watching this film, you know, and this frustration that I essentially have played out for you. Yeah, so I was in a large hall that was very reminiscent of a hall that I think it might have been Lambda or RADA, one of these big acting schools that you audition for. Yeah, and like, I think the furthest I ever got was like through a drama school called Rose Bruford. I think I got to like a third round or something like that. Okay, but so I had to like perform music and other such things, you know. And during that time, obviously, in my life, there's a lot of like involvement with other theatre and stuff like that, and theatre kids and stuff. No opportunity at that point in time to actually just sort of like jump in and do any sort of film work. It's all been theatre, despite wanting the other thing. But anyway, so I'm in this location, okay, and big hall, big echoey hall, and at front of me is a woman, and she looks like the TV gardener Charlie Dimmock, okay?
Right.
Just someone like that, okay?
Yeah.
And what she's doing is she's talking to everyone there, all of the other people that are there, and she's trying to get them set up, trying to get them involved in an internship or an apprenticeship. She wants someone to literally go outside and shovel shit. Okay, she's got a big pile of shit, and she wants people to shovel that shit. Okay, and so I chime up and basically say like, well, what are we doing with this shit? Like, where are we putting it? You better not be putting it in plastic bags or something like that. And she starts having a go at me. Okay, she starts having a go at me, and then other people are like shh, and like telling me to be quiet and stuff like that. And after that, I stormed out. I was like, I'm not having this. I'm not shoveling shit. I have my dignity. I might not be doing what you want me to do, but I have my dignity, you know? And that was pretty much it. And the rest of the dream was me just talking to people that I know in life now. It wasn't yourself, but it was other people like yourself, you know, trying to explain. It's like, it's important to keep your dignity, you know? So anyway, like, if anything, it was me unpacking why I never actually went down the theatre route, if that makes sense. And it had all of this amalgamation of other such things. It's like, you know, my career in life started as a gardener, you know, and it's that sort of like mixed in with it all. And, you know, I'm here now. I'm a teacher, you know, I teach film studies. I've got a hell of a lot of education since then, you know, and other like experiences and stuff like that. Been a filmmaker, etc., you know, that sort of thing. I've had loads of other experiences, but this film unlocked these memories of uncomfort and like things that I just hadn't dealt with before, you know?
I mean, you can argue, if we go back to what we were saying on episode 1, that film can be a medium to heal and to kind of process stuff, that this film was successful in a way of getting you back to that place and just kind
Yeah.
of going, here's how you actually feel about this.
So whoever wrote that part of it, that part of the film, they obviously did a really, really good job, because it got an emotional reaction at me. It triggered my unconscious, it triggered my ego. Yeah. So yeah, it's good. I mean, I've talked about myself, what's your history with the theatre?
So mine is a little bit more varied, a little bit longer. So I didn't kind of, I've not been a gardener. So I kind of discovered kind of acting pretty early on. So I'll share some personal details with you, listeners. Not too personal, don't worry.
I've been pretty personal. Don't worry about it tomorrow.
I struggled as a kid to kind of socialise. I know. Unbelievable. But I was a really shy kid. I have some kind of conditions that make that a little bit difficult and uncomfortable, and that's an episode by itself, so we'll leave it there for now. So my acting tutor at the time, that sounds like I'm from a posh school, doesn't it? I'm not from a posh school, folks. It's just the drama teacher.
Yeah, he's not posh, don't worry.
I'm basically like This Is England without the racism. So the drama teacher at the time was like, give this speech a go, and then I did it, and it was the first time that my kind of peers looked up and was like, wow, this guy's the dude,
Yeah.
He's your boy.
Yeah.
So I had that kind of connection, and I started to discover myself and my own voice through theatre. So I kind of followed that through the normal kind of educational levels, college, university, and I established my own theatre company.
Yeah.
This is becoming like a day in the life, like Diary of a CEO, isn't it? So I had a theatre company, and long story short, I produced lots of different things, my own plays, my own kind of films alongside all of that. So I have walked the professional boards, both as a paid actor and as a director who is paying other actors. So I've done a little bit of both, right? So I have that context. I've done some kind of like off West End stuff. I've never been on a West End stage. But I've done some off West End stuff. So a lot of the kind of familiarity of being the person that's in charge and everyone being a fuckwit, and you're like, but it's not you haven't got a financial stake in this. And it's all right for you to be realistic and fucking real, but it's me that's put the cash up for this, and it's my reputation that's on all of the posters. So that part of the film made
the
me
Zach
go back to that.
Galifianakis character.
Yeah, if anything, that was the one that because Michael Keaton's character had the stake in it, but I was Michael Keaton and Zach, right? I was that guy that was. If it was successful, it was because I pushed it out. If it did well, it's because I kept my shit together. So if anything, I didn't feel angry.
Yeah.
I didn't have any weird dreams. I felt anxious, though.
Yeah.
I felt anxious about this guy just going, we've got people coming, get your shit together. Yeah. Why has he got a bone on the stage? Yeah. Because as farcical as that sounds, this is the kind of shit that I had to deal with when I was working on a show. Yeah. I did a big project for someone that will not be named because he's a dickhead.
But you know who you are.
Yeah, you know who you are. And I'm sure you're enjoying your fame, but you're a dickhead.
It's Tom Cruise, just say it.
Fuck you, Tom. No. So I did a big project with them, and lots of people got involved because they heard the name, right? And the amount of shit I had to deal with on that project. Yeah. I genuinely have never been more stressed in my life. And you know me, I'm like a little wind-up puppy that's running around all the time, just like, everything's falling apart. Yeah. But this was unreal. Yeah. And I just remember those times of running around being like, no one is listening. Yeah. Everyone's doing their own shit. Like the bit where Edward Norton's character goes, "Should we just fuck for real?" That's the kind of mentality that I've worked with people that like that. Yeah. Not necessarily like, "Shall we fuck on stage?" But I'm gonna massively change the script because me as a character doesn't feel that way. I don't give a fuck. We're 7 days into a 10-day tour. Yeah. Do it the fucking same way.
Self-obsessed.
I'm getting it's all coming back.
Yeah,
I can feel it.
It's anger-inducing if you know that sort of thing. And so like, there's other people out there that are like, oh, well done. What a wonderful performance and all of that stuff. But we're here just like so frustrated.
You've not lived it.
This is awful.
Yeah.
And the thing is, another issue that I have just with the whole premise of it, okay, is we're both from working class backgrounds, okay,
yes.
Both with like estranged fathers, etc., split households and stuff like that. Not a lot of income.
Oh, I'm not
coming
from
in.
a split household though.
Oh, okay, all right, but okay, fair enough. But like low income coming in and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think part of the way these people are acting, it reminds me of the fact that a lot of these people have not had financial troubles in life as well. And so, you're getting anxious of people just like not really giving a crap about whether or not something is successful. They're often, more often than not, I even picked up the statistics of this because, obviously it's something everyone needs to know. More often than not, these actors, theatre actors and things like that have been able to keep going long enough to actually be successful and have that big break, come from privileged backgrounds.
Absolutely.
And have, backing from mum and dad and things like that. You'll look at someone's IMDb and it might not necessarily be nepotism in the way that it's like, I think even like Jake Gyllenhaal and stuff like that, I think they're related to the Coppolas in some way.
Yeah, they all got their start, didn't they?
Yeah. But I mean, like, it's either that or it's like, their dad was an investment banker or something like a financier or something like that. It's always going to be something that funds that lifestyle.
You're about to trigger my Lin-Manuel rant.
I
can
We've
feel
not got time for a
I can
Lin-Manuel
feel it.
rant. But yeah, I mean, like, I'll give you a statistic, okay? So from August 2020, the Creative Industries Policy and Evidence Centre provided this statistic that just 16%, Tom, 16% of people in creative jobs are from working class backgrounds. Yeah, that's not taking into account race or anything like that. You've got all of this equality stuff going on and stuff like that. But literally, there are loads and loads of people on the poverty line who never have the same opportunity that people have that can be easily represented in this fucking film.
So, like last time we did a film review, you ended with the,
well, it's not ended. We'll go on a positive.
Screw you, industry, because most people never get their films made. And now it's, especially you that's working class, you're fucked. And that's 16% of workers. How many of those are script writers and directors?
Yeah.
Probably very minimal. Probably like 2%.
Yeah. I mean, but look, at the end of the day, I think we're on the, like, at the moment, like, I think as a culture, we need to work through politics and other such things that I kind of feel like are a distraction, okay? But at the end of the day, we are divided by race, by gender and other such things. And the only thing that we do have that's actually, bringing us together is something that we can all relate to, is the fact that we don't have any fucking money and other people have money, And there should be more in order to like help sort that out. But at the end of the day, people are able to stay within that industry for longer. They have the financial stamina that a lot of other people don't have. And it just boils my blood.
And actors are the same, right? Because most people from our backgrounds will maybe will get roles, but then they'll have to subsidize those roles with being a barista. There's a whole meme about actors being baristas. Those from fortunate backgrounds do not have to worry when they have gaps.
Yeah. And also, the thing is, people that are perhaps more relatable sort of people who have to go through this process in order to make it, they have to mingle with these absolute fuckwits as well, and they have to jump through hoops. It's the idea of like, it's not who you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know. You have to get to know these people.
Yeah.
And I mean, to be honest with you, if I've gone through my life and I get to Michael Keaton or Riggin Spriggan, whatever his name is, if I get to his age, I might end up like, topping myself on stage or doing something stupid like that. Do you know what I mean?
Because of the toxicity of
just if you've had a life of that, it's like people in this industry tend to make things far too stressful.
Yeah.
And it's only because they're all just vapid, filled with like everyone in that film had the one agenda: I just want to be loved.
Yeah.
You know, and the only people that were not toxic, you know, you had that woman pretending she was pregnant and stuff like that, which I really liked. Was she was like completely draped in red, the color red, whilst she was saying that, and I was like, get away from her.
Yeah.
But you know, there's people like that all over the place. They all had the little monologue where they were basically, I just want people to tell me I've made it, or you know, oh, did they like me? Did they love me? That sort of thing.
They're all narcissists, aren't they?
Yeah,
they're
they
all
are.
massive narcissists with inferiority complexes. And that's kind of one of my issues, right?
Yeah.
They're all the same character,
Yeah.
but dressed in a different skin.
I kind of feel like, you know, the reason why I want to share these sort of personal stories within this as well is because I have that deep-seated thing as well. You know, there's like everyone kind of has it, you know, some more than others. You know, it's your ego, isn't it? Like at the end of the day, and facets of that sort of thing, you know. But yeah, like just that idea of not what you know, or not who you know. No, God, I messed it up. It's not what you
Take two.
It's not what you who. It's who you what.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I remember the phrase being.
But look, at the end of the day, like it seems to me that the economy is getting so bad now that it's going to be, you know, the shit shovelers or like retail. I was going to say, but I'll just jump to shit shovelers. You know,
Yeah.
it's going to be, oh, you want to be a shit shoveler? Well, it's not. It's difficult to get in there. It's very competitive. You know, those creative industry shit shovelers. You know, it's who you know. Do you know anyone who shovels shit?
I know a few people, but not for money.
Yeah.
That's a good segue to barrel towards the end, isn't it?
Yeah.
Before we kind of finish this off, it would be unfair. To Edward Norton to not discuss the trunk in the room.
You want to talk about his penis?
I want to talk about the scene.
No, I didn't let you talk about the penis. I distracted you by talking about the tattoo. But yeah, go on. Let's talk about his penis. Let's talk about Edward Norton's penis.
I just think that it's very symbolic.
Yeah.
Of kind of the character and the farcical nature of everything, right?
Where he couldn't get it up on stage.
That he couldn't get it up, and then he was able to perform.
Yeah.
When there was an audience.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting from that.
Yeah.
That his own, and he has that weird kind of monologue with the daughter character, right, where he's like, "I'm a fraud.
Yeah.
I can only ever perform when there are people baying me to be this thing."
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting because the whole time, Riggany Wog is constantly trying to be something by not being the thing that everyone knows him for.
Yeah.
He's trying to get out of that cycle.
Yeah.
And Edward Norton's character is trying to get into that cycle of, if I can be what you want me to be, then maybe I can be that in the outside.
Yeah.
And and Michael Keaton's was the subversive of that, right? You all want me to be this fucking Birdman,
Yeah.
but I want to be known as an intellectual. I want you to credit me as an actor. I want you to say that I mean something past being in a stupid fucking like bird suit.
Well,
And I thought the juxtaposition of the two were really interesting.
I mean, like there's loads of sort of like it's almost like a cliche, is that idea of like a performer who like lives for the crowd when they're like at home, they're like a shell of their self, and they're just waiting for that moment to then, you know, go back on stage. You know, I mentioned the wrestler, that's a good example of that, you know, but I think that's like I'm talking more of on an emotional standpoint than his actual life, you know. But yeah, like it's a good depiction, I think, of a huge amount of things with that in mind, you know. And these characters kind of like represent different facets. One, and they keep mentioning it as well, like the dialogue's really heavy-handed with it. It's like one saying he's talented and he's the theatre guy and he doesn't care about that fame, and the other guy is pretending that he's that, but he's not.
Yeah.
He's the screen actor waiting for the next big thing to come along, Birdman 3, you know. And he's desperately wanting to be something else, but what he should be is a father.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, I mean, it's got that aspect to it. It's got a broken home. I mean, it's Emma Stone, right?
Yes.
Emma Stone, yeah. It's a really good performance from her, I think.
funnily enough, she was the most believable, but I think it's because she wasn't a lovey, right? She wasn't portrayed to. A lovey is a term for for the kind of stereotypical kind of theatre actor who's like massively engrossed in that kind of culture.
The only redeemable characters were the ones that weren't loveys, and there was only like 2 of them,
which was the mother, and the daughter.
Yeah, the mother from The Office.
And if your redeemable character is a drug addict who doesn't care that she's a drug addict, then you've even done something very well, because you want these characters to be narcissistic assholes, or something's gone awry.
Yeah.
And it's funny, because we were talking about we like this film.
Yeah.
And through this discussion, I feel like I like this film again.
Well, it's not the content that I dislike running through. I mean, it made me feel uncomfortable, but it's neither here nor there. I very rarely dislike a film. Like, there's lots of reasons why I would dislike a film, but then there's ways in which I can find redeemable features. And there are redeemable features for this film, but I am entrenched in the idea that I don't like this film, okay? And this is me being serious now, and obviously, hopefully we can tell a joke before the end of the podcast, but I just have to say this. I don't appreciate a film that rewards someone's suicide or suicide attempt with a favourable outcome. I don't necessarily feel like that is a good message to leave out there. And I know there's nuance, I know there's irony, I know there's other such things like that, but the guy shot himself on stage and then everyone loved him again. Yeah. If you think about, I mean, like, it's such a sore topic. I apologize if this is like hurting anyone. I'm gonna put a disclaimer at the start of this anyway about this. But if you think about the idea of suicide, and you talk about a cry for attention, and those two things, that's what he essentially did. But you are, as writers, rewarding him, and then he leans out of the window and then he's flying in the clouds and it's like, oh, daddy, you're free at last. It's just, I mean, what are you trying to say with that ending? It just annoyed me so much. And there's certain programs and films and things like that I just won't condone because of the light that they provide in relation to the subject of suicide. It's not a good thing to be encouraging people to do, and that should be bloody obvious. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a mixed message, right?
Absolutely.
And at no point do they actually stop and kind of say, this man is ill.
Yeah.
Because the characters don't stop and pause and go, are you okay? Even the Zach character, for me, was the worst one for this.
Yeah.
Come in.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, thank you so much for almost taking your life, because you've got us this idea of fame above all. And I get that from a nuanced perspective, they were probably saying, look, how disgusting is this? But he got every single thing he wanted.
Yeah.
By doing the one thing that we really should not be promoting.
Yeah, and like they could have played that any other way, but like Zach was like, "Oh, you got what you wanted, isn't this what you wanted? Huh?
Yeah.
And he ended up saying, "Yeah, this is what I wanted," and then there was no change in that mind. It could have been that it was revealed, well, now that he's done the deed and everything like that, and he's had this second chance, he's gonna be better, or something along those lines. It's just, he got us what he wanted. Now he can fly. He can be free and fly around.
And honestly, when he took the kind of bandages off,
I'm a changed man.
The beak symbolism, I thought, oh, they're going to do this. But they even did that, like, oh, look at my new nose.
Yeah.
Everything's come up Millhouse.
Yeah.
And like, when you're that low, when you feel like that is the only option, don't tell people that is their out. Right,
yeah.
Because that is a really scary premise.
Yeah.
And what, as filmmaker, you're intelligent enough to put together a well-written, well-nuanced film. You're intelligent enough to know what the subtext of your ending says.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it does leave a little bit of a bitter pill, I think.
I mean, at the end of the day, there are people who go to prison if like there's evidence that they have encouraged someone to do that to themselves. You know, there are, at least in the UK, there's been a big like example of this a couple of like years ago, at least, like even like a teenager just doing it through text and stuff like that. If it's wrong to do it through text, it's wrong to do it in a film, you know? So I don't know, if I'm missing the nuance there, then I'm not going to say just shoot me, but like, you know, like
that can't be the joke that we end on. that can't be the light-hearted bit. It's gotta be a bit more than that.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, not enough talking about that. I think this has been a good episode. Like, I think we've balanced appreciating this film and venting about what this film represents. You know,
and I think this is a good second episode to show you that it's not always going to be our favourite films. We are going to delve into films that we like, films that make us cry, films that make us angry, films that we maybe categorically dislike but can find value in. We're not interested in, this isn't our top 100 films of all time and you were going to go through every film that we've ever liked. We're going to dissect films of all different kind of creeds. I mean, you were saying about Sam Goes to Frogtown.
Sam Goes to Frogtown. We're going to have to do that quite soon because I keep mentioning it. But no, the next film we're going to be watching is The Substance, which is one that's come out quite recently. And I thought this would be a nice way to go with this because there's a clear link in the types of characters that we have here. So it's Demi Moore's turn to do a Michael Keaton.
I love a bit of Demi Moore.
Who doesn't? But yeah, she's definitely depicted in a certain way in this film. Yeah, it's a real interesting film. But yeah, before then, we are going to have our companion episode on this topic. And what are we going to be looking at?
So we are going to be looking at the origin of voices. So just like parts of this episode, there may be some parts that we might want to be a bit more serious, but we're also going to delve into the religious iconography of voices.
Just how does the idea of voices and voices from above in your head, etc., how they have had an impact on culture.
Right, and give us an amazing joke to tell us how you promised the people. So you've got to have them like belly laughing, Cal.
Fuck.
No, you know it's ain't gonna help you, buddy. You ain't got a good joke in there. It's all symbolism and cave painting drawings. Is that what I just saw in there?
Yeah, there's loads of stuff. Knock knock.
Go on.
You just got to say who's there, ain't you?
Yeah, go on. Knock knock. Who's there? It's all the same thing, isn't it?
No, you do it properly. Yeah. Knock knock.
Who's there?
The Patreon.
The Patreon. Oh no. The Patreon. Who?
Join up to our Patreon.
You'll at least be like the Patreon where you can do.
No.
Like
that's what you got. That's it. This is the end of the episode now. In fact, actually, I've cut now, and all of this is not going to be
unbelievable. Great. When did you cut?
I haven't actually cut yet.
Okay. So this is meta right now.
This is better. This is like we're just chatting. This is not for the podcast.
Yeah.
So you can at this point in time you can just
Eat
let go and tell me your darkest secrets. What did you really think of Edward Norton?
This feels like a trap.
No.
Gemma Lackman, it's a trap.
No, it's...
I'm going to have my tea now.
I've stopped recording now. You can really tell me
Funny
what
how
you
you stopped recording,
Edward
but
Norton's
your arm didn't go to the laptop.
So what did you really think of Edward Norton's cock?
I thought it looked very phallic. But do you think there was prosthetics involved there, or do you think he just like raw dogged it?
There's quite a history in what's the word, prosthetic penises and things like that, isn't there? You know, obviously Mark Wahlberg, Boogie Nights, and I like one that I particularly like is prosthetic testicles in Step Brothers.
Yeah, didn't they like actually sort of like wrap it in rubber and stuff, and they like because there's behind the scenes of them playing with it, right?
That prosthetic testicle.
Or is that
cost,
Talladega Nights?
I don't know. There's definitely one in Step Brothers because he's putting it on the drums. He's putting his balls on the drums, but that cost a stupid amount of money to make.
I mean, it looked pretty ball baggy.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you think Edward Norton would have just whipped it out?
Yeah. Yeah, it gives me like, I'm going to show you my penis energy.
Okay. Well, folks, I tried to catch Tom out there.
I was
deep-seated.
Totally convinced, yeah. Totally convinced.
It's just not happened. Yeah. So this is definitely it now.
Bye.
Bye.